One is Alpha, which I think a lot of people in the audience know. Alpha CRC, it's a localization house that has been around for over 30 years now. I met them in San Francisco about 20 years ago. Paul and Manuela in an Italian restaurant here in San Francisco, when they were supporting a lot of local Bay Area, Silicon Valley tech companies, they've been, throughout the years, 30 plus years, they've been adapting to the changing requirements of the industry. Their competitive edge is creative content, localization, transcreation, origination, all that good stuff, marketing, transcreation. Here to tell you all about it are William, Manuela, and Paul. Take it away, Paul.
Yeah, thanks very much. Really looking forward to this. And but first of all, I just wanted to play a little bit of blues because we're going to do some transcreation in action. So just check this out. And in particular, check out the second verse. Said I love the way you walk. Said I love the way you walk. And I love the way you talk. And I love the way you walk. Said I love the way you walk. Honey, you my babe. I got my eyes on you. Eh, je j'aime ta son la façon de marcher. Amo el modo in cui parli. Bruchetje Bixevel. Ich liebe dein stille Stimme. Was il meia corgi gavagi boom. I got my eyes on you.
Thank you, Paul. That's great.
That was great.
Thank you. So Manuela, if we look at this song, if we listen to this song, help me out here about the lines. I love the way you walk. How can we do that in French?
Yes, so the French version was rendered, as you heard, as J'aime ta façon de marcher, which back translates as I love the way you walk.
So that's a literal translation, right?
Absolutely.
And then line 2, I love the way you talk. What is this in Italian? I know you have this one.
This was rendered in Italian. I'm going home here. Amo il modo in cui parli, which back translates as I love the way you talk.
Another literal translation. And then we have Icelandic. You're gonna have to do an Icelandic. I know this isn't native to you. I love the way you walk.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a stretch, but the rendition in Icelandic sounded as Fu rifir fix vovel, which back translates is as you move so well.
So this is more of a marketing transcreation, marketing localization, translation.
Absolutely.
And then we have, I love the way you talk. Can you do one more line here? Can you give me it in German, the translation?
Yes, German was rendered as Ich liebe deine silberne Stimme, which back translates as I love your silver voice, which of course is very evocative.
Yes, another good marketing translation. And now we're going to do something in transcreation. What about the last line, line 5? And I love the way you walk, honey, you're my baby. But do it in Catalan.
In Catalan, this was rendered as Fas que el meu cor vagi boom, which back translates as you make my heart go boom.
Excellent. So that's transcreation. But now, Manuela, you're going to take us through the translation, transcreation, and copywriting.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at this. You know, we went through this example to walk you through the experience. And as you see, a little bit of a crescendo in terms of the emotional impact. Now, when we look at the spectrum of these processes, when we talk about marketing translation, we are still indeed talking about translation. It is the rendition of a text from one language to the other with attention to the accuracy of the information, allowing ourselves a certain stylistic freedom to make it relevant. Now, within the span of the marketing content, there is that section that is still quite informative, that it is descriptive. There are parts of the web, there are product descriptions, white paper, data sheets, and this content is very well suited for marketing translation, and therefore carried out by marketing translators. Now, when we talk about transcreation, we are indeed at this point transforming, adapting, source existing content from one language to the other in a much more creative way in order to touch upon the linguistic flair and the cultural flair of the audience we're targeting. Now, what content are we looking here? This is high visibility web content, marketing campaigns, strap lines, content that is influential, that is visible, and that it needs to be found. So on one end, it relies, just like in the English, in the source process, to a good SEO, SEM processes. It relies on researching and identifying those keywords in both locales, around which content is then adapted, manipulated in a creative way so that it meets the flair of the language we're targeting. And transcreators are the resources for this job. Now, it's important to understand this is not just an embellishment exercise. In some ways, sometimes it's a sobering act. It's really understanding what are the linguistic and the cultural characteristics of the language we're going into and adapting that. When we now talk about multilingual copywriting, we're making a little bit of a leap here. And we're now talking about creating original copy, writing freshly in the target language. We're talking about content that is meant to impact. We're creating and engaging with our message. Now, this is high impact content. It's content that is advertisement copy, social media posts, blogs, certain marketing campaigns. It's content that is not just meant to inform, that is not just meant to influence or evoke an image or an emotion. It's really meant to create an action, to invoke a reaction, be it a click, be it an engagement, be it a response, an answer, all the way to usage of a product, of a platform, or a sale. So it relies, as it does in its source process, not just into the text. The text actually sometimes it's biased in a way. It relies on a message, on an idea, on the original marketing brief, in understanding what the message is and how do we recreate this experience in the locale and in the country we're going so that it is meaningful for that locale and it can prompt the reaction that is intended to do. And these are better suited by copywriters. Now, it's important to look at this span to understand that as beautiful as it is linguistically, the exercise is not just a linguistic exercise or to its own end. It's really based, we're looking here at a well thought out process of mapping content through an approach for a specific target in order to make it relevant to where it is intended to. Now, being that we are talking about the future of function, and as we all have discussed and heard so far, we are in the digital era. Technology has revolutionized our work as well as our industry and continues to do so. Maybe it's important to note what is the role of technology when it comes to creative content. And what is the future? We have noticed, we can say that for transcreation, not unlike translation, there is a very sweet spot among the GMS platforms, the localization platforms. Even with its creative aspect, it still heavily relies or benefits from terminology management, sentence reuse, in-context checks. It is a bilingual environment, text to source, so it has a very good place there. We can say this also about the single source copywriting. You know, in the CMS environment, that's also a very sweet spot for that in order to manage the content, in order to maintain stylistic cohesivity. All of these functions are captured. Usually, though, it is single language or limited from a linguistic point of view. That's where I think the next point is key. If ideally, we would want to bring multilingual content writing into this platform. It would be ideal to have in the future a single tool for content creation, transcreation, and multilingual copy. Therefore, widening the breadth of language reach. So just a little thought, something that we're keeping an eye for going forward. Now that I've taken a few minutes to go through the structure and the frame of what we're talking about, let's see how does this in reality, what does this translate to in practice? So Paul, maybe you can walk us through that. How is it done?
Sure. Well, this really comes, I think, from two very specific endpoints. And the first is when we're talking about creative content or creating multilingual creative content. First of all, you have a cultural approach, and the cultural approach is about creativity. It's about seasons. It's about holidays. It's about personalization. It's about segmentation, absolutely and utterly within the country, within the locale. So, and then the second is very much about a kind of SEO, SEM, keyword engineering approach, and I'll come on to that in a second. But first, let's have a look at this cultural approach here. We worked with a company called Next. Next have got, they're a high street store in the UK, but they've got retail outlets all over the world. And what we did here is that their international team were looking for a way forward that broke out of the kind of UK British high street culture. They got great products. They were very well priced, very well designed. They moved in quantity, but they wanted to make sure that they were hitting a more local and more regional scene. So they came to us and said, how should we go about this? And what we did was we looked at the personalization country by country, region by region, and we looked at cultural events that we could hang the campaigns around. We looked at the holidays and festivals. We looked at the changing seasons. When would you be likely to change, your overcoat for a linen jacket, or vice versa? And we looked at the social structures and the segments, the age groups, and the buying habits of those age groups, so that when we came to do the campaigns, we could actually write creatively in a very personalized way, using all sorts of local stories, myths, legends, anything that we could hang onto that kind of cultural side to drive forward the storytelling that was about the imagination and creation of a moment to buy. So this led us to do a whole range of things around adverts and banners, homepages, and modified a lot of the content that they already had on their site.
And so what was then the outcome of this? I mean, what was the business impact? Was that measurable in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if we look at, in particular, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, we did a whole load of A/B testing with the content that they already had on their site and our content. And the more culturally specific, the stuff that was hanging around and really pointing out seasonal or personal segmentation, told a personal story. That was 22% up in terms of the take up on the web page, and it turned into more products sold for the campaigns that we were promoting, in particular, as it happened in UAE and Saudi Arabia, but replicated around the world.
Excellent. So now you walk us through the cultural approach. You mentioned earlier there is another approach at the other end of the spectrum, a more structured approach. What is that all about? How does that differ?
Okay, yeah. So the structured approach is you really have to think about this in terms of keywords and what is findable. So we worked in this cases with Alibaba and AliExpress across a massive product range, and what we were trying to do was establish a brand message through the analysis of markets. And once we'd analyzed those markets, we could find a tone of voice. But from then, we needed to find the keywords. And the keywords acted like a skeleton, like a structure. So instead of starting with the imagination, we started with the process of identifying those keywords that were findable and provided us with the structure. And from then, we created the new content. So this is another way of looking at it. We understood their online presence, and what we did was we worked platform by platform, so 10 languages over 4 platforms, and we just built up a storyline using the SEO keyword engineering approach and layering on top of that the cultural and personalization approach. And we were doing.
Which platform did this end up showing up?
Yeah, well, there it was. You can see them there. They're in multiple platforms. And we measured this in a slightly different way. So here we created monthly calendars, and we measured this in terms of how much output that could we get that was being reacted to. So we measured reactions, and we measured the size of the platform and the take up on the platform. And then we thought, because of this huge kind of product range, the best way of actually measuring this was what kind of star rating are we seeing in the areas in which we are handling this SEO and keyword engineering process. And in those areas where there was this more personalized, segmented content, the star ratings in the reactions went up from 3.5 or 3.5 stars to 4.5. So we were pleased to be able to manage and measure that response.
Excellent, thank you, Paul. So we were able to see the business impact of both cases. Bill, do you want to take us through a wrap up of our session?
Thank you, Manuela, Paul. Just a quick wrap up here. So really what we're talking about is a strategy to build your business, to grow your market, your brand, your customer base. Really personalize it. How are we going to do that? We're going to, of course, you can have lots of data like we talked before in the previous segments. But we're going to segment that. We're going to personalize it. We want to make as much of an impact on that individual, connecting your brand to that individual. We call that addressable content. And then we take it a step further. With in-country people, we create a fully local experience. It feels like it's made, it's built, it smells, it tastes. It's everything about that local experience. They feel like it was grown there, it was built there. And it's, again, focused on the individual, but we call this a native brand experience. All of this rolls up into your multilingual global strategy to help you build, again, your brand, your market, and your customer base to make more money and be successful. So hopefully you got a lot out of today, and thank you very much. I hand it off to Talia.
Thank you, guys. As always, always something fun and exciting and surprising, and then some really good, insightful content. Do you want to unshare? And let's see all of you. And we're open for questions. Folks, please put it in either in the Q&A or in the chat tabs. I'll fire out some quick questions. So, in our localization industry, there's always this friction, if you like, between local and global. Do we build universal experiences, universal products that are marketed and are created to the experience for universal, the universal element for global audiences, or do we go with geo-fit experiences, right? And if you think about sort of the unique user journey from how the service or the product will be discovered, right? So discoverability, acquisition, core engagement, conversion, retention, all this way to loyalty and evangelism, brand evangelism, right? Understanding that humans, we are developing product and experiences for humans, not for robots, and the invoked emotion is the expected behavior, and what triggers that invoked emotion is different, right, in the different markets and the different cultures, the environments, the ecosystems are different. So I'm really curious about the specific work you're doing, because that is something that I think every company struggles with today with international expansion, right? They know, okay, localization in the narrow definition of language support, I think is a common base for everyone, for all companies. But then that other layer of really adopting new markets for the long haul, right? Beyond being understood, really understanding the customers and optimizing the experiences, right? So sort of, maybe for you, Paul, a quick question around, if we think about kind of if there is such a silver bullet in terms of the key element for success, and then a follow up to that, what is in your experience, is there a true, and can we quantify that impact to the business bottom line?
Sure. I think there are, whatever we say about the kind of creativity and whatever we say about the imagination, which are really important, and those cultural elements, we can still see the shape of a process. We can still see some key questions to ask, and we can still see a process to go through that you can follow. So you're not just guessing what to do. And I think that process starts very much with the brief. You have to get the brief from the company that you're working with. You have to have a level of expectation, and that expectation splits into two. There's the expectation from the central, wherever they're based, and there's the expectation from the local, wherever they're based. And you have to be able to get that brief from two, not just take the central marketing message. Let's say it's somewhere in the States and they want to go to Germany. That was the example that you used. But somehow you haven't taken any time, or you've accidentally missed the fact that some local stakeholders have got a really important view on this, and they want to blend their view with this central stakeholding. So similarly, just giving the whole thing, if central just say, well, Germany, you guys go off and do it, then there's a real danger that the core brand messages are lost at that point. So what you're always trying to do is get the brief, the double brief from the central and the local, blending that together. But then what you've got to do is be able to take that further and make sure that, for example, if you're delivering product, is it being delivered correctly? If it's not delivered correctly, have you got some people in that country that can actually follow up and help and manage any outcomes or issues? So there, that practical process of making sure that you've got the central message plus the local message plus the infrastructure, that's what kind of counts. And then on top of that, then you can begin to start layering the processes of creation and imagination. Let's not sell something to somebody and then not be able to deliver it, or not be able to fix it, or not be able to talk about it in any other forum afterwards. So I think that it doesn't have to be a complex infrastructure, it doesn't have to be hundreds of people, but it has to be that desire to match those three things together. I think then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to start measuring impact. If I look at my central message, if I then blend that with a local message, if I create moments of sale or opportunities for me to sell, and I can deliver that and elicit feedback from the way I've performed, then I can start building a business impact. And then I don't have to do everything. I don't just have to keep on doing it all. I can remove the bits that aren't working, but wherever I'm getting good feedback, I can increase that. So, you get this kind of beneficial circuit where, in fact, you're not spending money where you don't need to, and you're beginning to identify those places that you're having an impact. And then finally, that isn't going to be the same country by country, and it's not going to be the same segment by segment or region by region. So taking some time just to understand, am I speaking to 18 to 22-year-olds, or am I speaking, to 40 to 45-year-olds? And I'm speaking to a mainly male population or a mainly female population, or am I speaking to sports people, or am I speaking to creators? Who am I speaking to? And then I can really make sure that I'm, layering that on top. So I don't think it's not rocket science. It's not overly complicated, but just taking the trouble to do, I think there were probably 8 to 10 things that if you did them every time, you'd be able to measure what you needed to get that global take up.
It's really about applying the design thinking, right? User empathy, right? So, yeah. But really truly understanding who it is we're optimizing for, and that's integrating right. Those regional, cultural nuance factors in our relevancy algorithm, in our product strategy, right? And in our marketing positioning. That's the most important. Right, and exactly. Even just and thinking about where you don't have to, like you said, it's not, you don't have to apply, you don't have to rebuild a whole new experience for each market, but on core funnels, right, on key areas.
And if I can add to it, I think it's also an important way to see how the language strategy plays a part into the entire global product and content strategies, because you're able to measure it and to see how, if you do it right, how it affects that, and then you can bring it all the way to the top. This is also part of the decision-making process. It's part of looking at the entire global process. It's not, like we said at the beginning, a linguistic exercise to itself, it really plays into that entire approach.
Right. So Catherine from the audience is asking, have you been able to track the ROI of your clients' projects? And to what extent do you see your clients now considering localization as an investment in their business growth rather than an expense? That's a classic.
Yeah, that's
question.
the question.
Yeah.
The $1 million question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. So it's crucially important to track. The one thing about I would say mature localization or mature transcreation, people supplying these services these days. We're not just trying to transact anymore. It's not just a question of saying, well, how many languages do you want and how many words have you got? Here they are. Boom. You absolutely have to be invested in the outcome, and the way that you need to do that is know the ROI. You've got to elicit that from the client, and clients know that these days. The mature model is that they want to show you what you've done, the effect of what you've done, because for two reasons. One is they want you to do more of the good stuff, and they want you to not do anything where things aren't working, where the A/B testing goes wrong. We need to do something else. You've got to work together. So yes, the answer is yes. Looking at the ROI and how the brand increases from the point of view of take up, sale, impact, social media, sentiment analysis, all these things that are obvious when you think about it. This is what marketing and promoting international business, this is what it's about. So let's use those measurements and that data to tell us what to do. The second thing is localization or transcreation or multilingual content rising to the surface in getting into the boardroom and making people think, yeah, what we have to do is make sure we have a multilingual strategy. Yes, it is. It's absolutely, it's increasing. It's not the first thing that people think about, because people always think about product and the features of the product and the benefits of the product, and then how they're going to get it abroad, and then, oh, we better localize it. But I would say that blend, which was always localization at the end, we're swimming up. And the more we talk about relevant things like this, the ROI, and not just a transaction at the end of the deal, the more we talk about that relevance, the more we're adding value, the more likely we are to be able to get those kinds of conversations going.
And it's a bit of a two-sided marketplace, isn't it? Because we want to optimize for the end users. We are truly understanding our end international customer segments who are going to interface with the products. But at the same time, we also need to understand the stakeholders within the company who's building the products, right? Whether it's the lead functional lead stakeholders, right? The engineering person, the marketeer, the ops, right? The biz dev and so on. All of those execs, because they have an agenda and they have a goal. They have KPIs that they need to meet, right? So it's really adapting so that everyone is happy. But at the end of the game, we want to
ideal. Yeah, make everybody happy. That's
yeah. When everyone's happy, everyone's happy.
Job done.
That's right. All right. Last words from Alpha. Top of mind was one big message to the world.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's been great. Lovely to and fantastic information that we had in those presentations before. Really enjoying it. So all power to everybody. On we go.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Take care. Take care.